Now we're going to move on to some VSM enhancements that were made in 8.8. And one of the questions that a customer said, well, I needed to know if my data is exposed. So we started processing some event records. And let me define what VTV exposure is. So once I've had a dismount of a virtual volume, that's only in one particular buffer at that point. So I really haven't secured that, okay? And until it's in a second location, we consider that to be exposed. Now, it can be unexposed by one of two things. It can be unexposed by it's migrated to tape, okay? Or it's being replicated to another VSM, okay? So we're monitoring those records and calculating various metrics about the exposure time for each particular volume. And what we display, or we have the capability of displaying by management class, because your migration could be based upon management class. We display average exposure time, what was the maximum exposure time, the number of VTVs that were exposed, and the amount of gigabytes that were exposed. So let's take an example of the average exposure time. And this shows hour on the left, but we're changing this to minute because that's obviously a better metric here for this particular metric. And we're seeing that for the MDEF management class, we're seeing what amounts to about 12 to 15 minutes. And occasionally for the other class, the blue one that we're seeing here, we're jumping up to the higher levels. We can go and see why that is occurring by, again, through the drill downs that we're going to look at. Another picture that we get is how many of those VTVs are exposed at any particular given interval. So again, the peak here looks like about 16 VTVs were exposed at some point during that particular time. And then also a perspective from a gigabyte standpoint, how much data is it that's been exposed? Still is the only copy in the buffer that we have. And then if you drill down, this is an example of a drill down that says, okay, I want to find out how much is exposed and what was the exposure time, okay, that I'm looking at, okay? And so this shows it by exposure time that was there. It happens to be for a different sample here, okay? This was when there was a lot of virtual tapes that were exposed. And but from this chart, I can drill down on any particular VTV and look at what were the details of that exposure. And so this is an example here. So we've got a VTV, started mounting it. The identifier record says that we mounted this at 5:02 a.m. The dismount record says it was rewind unloaded at 5:05 a.m. The identifier record that HSC or VSM has written says I migrated it to tape at first tape at 5:15, and actually I migrated it to a second cartridge, in this case at 5:40, calculating an exposure time of 10 minutes. So again, you can, if need be, drill down and understand why it was exposed and whether that meets the criteria that you're expecting in your particular virtual tape system.